Happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone. Welcome to Nature Night. Yeah, don't be shy. I'm going to type in here to see if people have already joined. There we go. I'll be the first one to start the chat. Yeah. What a beautiful day it is out here in the mountains of Alberta, the Canadian Rockies. I hope everyone's enjoying a beautiful Sunday and enjoying this happy St. Paddy's Day. So, starting a little bit earlier today. Oh, yes. Roxanne is here. Jeremy is here. Right on. Glad to hear that you're excited, Jeremy. I love sharing my images and my stories behind my work. And of course, sharing some of the important messages that nature wants me to share. So, hey, Dave and Mary from Toronto. Great to see you guys again tonight. That's awesome. Well, I can't see you, but glad you're joining. Oh, wow. Jerry, that's awesome. Joining from California. Beautiful in Regina too. Great to hear, Leanne. Awesome, awesome. Looking forward to the new books. Thank you, Jerry. Really appreciate that. So I'll talk about the books a little bit midway through the presentation today. So hello from Cathedral City, California. That's two different groups from California. Coquitlam, glad you could join us, Tammy. That's great. Great to hear. So yeah. Lacombe, right on. People from Alberta, people from all over this beautiful country, and of course from all over the world as well. So great that we could all join. I want everyone to know I'm going to click off here the presentation just for a split second. Here we go. So everyone, I know that I don't have a collared shirt on tonight, but that's because this was my only shirt that was green. And look at how appropriate this shirt is for this webinar. Grizzly bear hugging his salmon. So I had to wear this for tonight. I thought it was hilarious when I found it in my drawer. So it was awesome to see. And of course, St. Patrick's Day is one of my favorite days of the year. So, oh, Greg's here. Great. Greg is part of our team in Saskatoon. Great that you're here. Wow, we've got Steve from London, UK. That's awesome. Great that you could join, Steve. Really appreciate that. Janine, my sister, is here from Saskatoon, part of the team as well. Keith and Sandra, sunny in Calgary. Great to hear you guys. So anyway, without further ado, we have some people signing in still, but I'm going to start with a poll. It is just a little bit before 5 p.m. here, but I'll start with a poll. Oh, it just struck 5 p.m. now. Let's start with a poll and let's find out where everyone is from. Now, I was told to leave this up a little bit longer because I guess it takes a while for everything to load up a bit. So let's just start with a poll and see where you're all from. I'll publish it now. Sorry about that. So there we go. Yeah, you guys can let me know. I'm always curious where all of you join us from. Wow, United States was in the lead right off the bat, but we know Western Canada typically wins. So you guys out in Eastern Canada are going to have to get all your friends and family on one of these one day so that we can see if we can outcompete Western Canada. So, oh, United Kingdom, wow, 4% of people in today are from the United Kingdom. That's great. What a great turnout. So, United States is 10%. Thank you for all of our friends south of the border here in Canada. We appreciate that. And Western Canada, 66%. Eastern Canada, 20%. Excellent, excellent. People are still coming in, so we'll just keep this poll going for a smidge of time. All right. No one from Australia. Looks like United States is at 12%. Wow, lots of people from the United States. So great that you could join us. Thank you, everyone. Okay, I ended that poll. And I'm going to start with just one more poll here before we get going, okay? I'm curious to know how you heard about the webinar. Was it our email invitation? Was it from my social media invitations? Was it from a friend, or was there some other way that you heard about us? So would be curious to know how. Oh, from a friend. Wow, right off the bat. Okay. Oh, nice. Okay, well, in the chat, you'll have to let me know if there's other ways that you've heard about this. So most people are from our email invitation. We really appreciate your loyalty. Our community is so fantastic. Myself, my sister Janine, our entire team at All in the Wild, we just really appreciate all of you. So thank you so much for your support of All in the Wild and what we're all about, conservation and advocacy through a lens. So looks like our email invitation is the winner at 84%, social media at 5%, and from a friend at 9%. Right on. So thank you for those of you that got it from a friend. We appreciate who might have shared that information with you, and really, yeah, that's great. Okay, so to get started here, we're started now. We should have most people in that are joining us tonight. I'm Jason Bantle, in case you haven't met me before. I am the founder and photographer at All in the Wild, Central Arctic, and it just drove me to share my passion for nature, my love for nature through a lens, and I just love sharing their story as much as I can. The natural world is so important, and of course they don't have a voice, and I try to give them a voice, that I can share with all of you, and many of you share my same passion. I know you do. I've met many of you, and you just have this love and appreciation for nature. So that's who I am. I want to say tonight, it looks like the bandwidth is pretty intense. So if I do drop off or any of the YouTube videos drop off, my apologies. I am in an area where the bandwidth should be very strong, but there must be a lot of people using the internet today. So if it does drop off, just either A, wait, it usually comes back, or B, just sign back in. But it should click back in. Okay, so don't stress. It usually does follow through again. I'm going to be doing this presentation for 30 to 40 minutes. We'll be talking about grizzly bears, celebrating them in Canada tonight. And after that, there's a question and answer period. So you can ask any questions. I'll do my best to answer them. If I can't, I will follow back up with you at a later time to answer your questions. So I'm going to start off with just a video here of one of our most famous patriarchs in Canada, one of our most notorious bears in Canada.
In and around Banff National Park, his exploits are legendary. The boss, a grizzly as big as they come.
He's also really good at occupying habitats around people without coming into conflict with people. And so that kind of just creates this scenario where he is well loved.
Over the years, the boss has made plenty of headlines. There was the time he was spotted eating a black bear, or when he survived being hit by a train. He's also believed to have fathered more than 70% of the area's cubs. But while hearing about his legend is easy in these parts, seeing the bear up close in person is another story. So when award-winning nature photographer Jason Leo Bantle spotted a set of fresh grizzly tracks in the snow, he went to investigate.
At this time of year, you don't want to go follow a grizzly bear. So I actually followed the grizzly bear backwards. I followed his trail backwards. I just had curiosity. I did a master's in biology and I love to know about animals.
After finding the bear's den, Bantle returned to his vehicle.
And I couldn't believe it, about a half a kilometer down, there was, the back of a bear with snow on it. It was glistening in the sunlight.
From the safety of his car, Bantle was able to capture these rare and up-close images of the boss.
And that evening, in the evening light as the sun set, he came through the meadow. And just this beautiful lumbering bear in his element.
The encounters made all the more meaningful because of the animal's age. The boss is believed to be over 20 years old, and grizzlies typically live 20 to 25. It's why Bantle doesn't take these stunning images for granted, or the time he got to spend in the presence of a local legend.
He's the boss. There's no question about it.
Heather Urex West, Global News.
Yeah, just an incredible encounter, and I feel so blessed to have experienced that. So very, very lucky. Just checking with everyone right now. I had a mention here that my feed was a little bit blurry, but is everything okay now or not? Can I just get someone in the chat to kind of let me know? Okay, I'll just check the chat here. Yes, clearer now. Okay, great, Keith. Thank you for answering that. I appreciate that. So yeah, so I had an incredible experience with the boss. Just so lucky a couple falls ago, and this really kind of shows, when there's 450,000 views just on YouTube global alone, it goes to show just how much we value grizzly bears, how much one bear can be so important, and really, I guess, kind of bring all of us as Canadians and around the world behind such a special animal. So it was really neat. And I actually just want to do a poll here and ask, how many people have actually experienced a grizzly bear in the wild? How many people have seen a grizzly bear? Yeah, here we go. I'm curious to know what people's experiences are. So have you seen a grizzly bear in the wild or have you not? Now, I've only experienced the boss about 6 times in my life. So not a lot, not that frequently. He tends to be quite a shy guy. On the encounters that I did have with him, one of them was a split second where he just popped his head up. He was digging for ground squirrels, and when he did look up, I literally got 12 images, and that was it. My camera shoots 12 frames a second. So, and later that afternoon, it was literally just a 30-second encounter where he walked through a meadow. So 67% of you have seen grizzly bears in the wild. Congratulations, that's awesome. 30% of you have not. So that'll change over time if you do head outdoors and such, depending where you live. And then how many of you have actually experienced the boss? This is a curious one for me as well. Because as I mentioned, I've only seen him 6 times in my entire life. So I haven't seen him that often. And he does tend to stick to himself, but he lives around the Banff area, the Banff town site. So if you do travel out to the Canadian Rockies and you are in the Banff area, there is a chance that you will see him. Now, his recognizable feature, of course, is his size, but also it's the fact that his one ear, he used to have an ear tag. He was known as bear number 122 before he was notoriously named the boss. And that ear tag at some point got ripped out. And so therefore he's missing part of his ear on the one side. And that makes him a very recognizable bear in the area here. Okay, so about only 8% of you have seen the boss. Congratulations, you're very lucky, 8%. That's incredible. And for those of you that haven't, well, good luck, and hopefully you do see him in a safe way and from a safe distance. We do have to be very respectful of these guys. These large males are quite an intense bear, right? They can be very protective. They can also be very dangerous, and the boss has been showing some behaviors of a little bit more aggression as of recent. And when we look at these big grizzlies, we have to understand that the boss is a very special animal. He's actually in his mid-20s. He's been hit by the train and survived, which is incredible. He's the father of over 50% of the cubs in the valley. His home range is somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,500 square kilometers. When they used to have a collar on him, there was 26 bears radio collared in the Banff area. And when they did have a collar on him, he ranged up to 2,500 kilometers square, or his home range was 2,500 square kilometers. And that is primarily because of one reason, and that is that these big guys, this is not necessarily a photo of the boss here, these big guys, whether it's the boss, whether it's a bear in the middle of British Columbia or up in the Yukon or in southern Nunavut, these grizzly bears, these big males all have a story. They all have a life. They all have, wow, a diary that we would all be like, wow. And the boss's diary, we've got to experience. We've got to get to know this guy. But these bears, they fight for the rights to mate with their females. They have big scraps with other males to be the big dominant guy. The boss has dug a bear out of its den in the middle, just before he went to sleep, and he ate it. He ate a smaller black bear. I mean, that's bear life. That's what these guys do. They're incredible, incredible animals. So as much as the boss is the most notorious bear in Canada, because he is, everybody knows about the boss. There's even a beer named after him in Banff town site. His story is the story of many male grizzlies. So when we celebrate the boss, we should actually be celebrating all grizzlies. So these big guys, they just have a reputation of eating and mating. That's kind of their thing. That's what they do. They're big. They're out there. They're filling up their bodies. They're getting their genes out for the future, so that the species can thrive and can be healthy and continue on for forever. So big home ranges, and primarily that's because they're in search of girlfriends. So when we look at other bear species, when we look at bears like black bears and such, we're looking at 3 different species of bears in Canada specifically: the black bear, the grizzly bear, and the polar bear. And I have another poll question here, lots of polls to start off with, but I'm curious to know what bear species is the biggest in your opinion? Curious to know this. And again, I'm going to wait for a bit because I do want to make sure that that everybody gets a chance to answer the polls. Okay, so we're seeing here. Okay, so I'm going to end this poll. We've got 2% of people think that black bears are the largest bear species in North America. 80% of you think it's the polar bear, and 16% of you feel that it's the grizzly bear. For the 80% of you that picked the polar bear, you are correct. That is actually the species that is the largest by far. Okay, the average male polar bear can actually be in the neighborhood of 1,000 to 1,700 pounds in weight. Incredible. Okay, so that's an average of about 1,200 pounds. Black bear males, the image that you see here is of a black bear. Black bears are in the neighborhood of 300 to 400 pounds, males would be. And when we look at grizzly bears, they're somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 to 800 pounds in weight. The boss is thought to be around 600 pounds in weight, and a more recent image that I released last year for Earth Day was the judge. And that bear was a big male polar bear. And I've mentioned to people that bear was probably around the 1,200 pound mark. So double the size and weight of a boss bear. Incredible. Yeah, they're just a next level bear, the polar bears. So grizzlies are nothing to play around with. And of course, black bears are not either. They're all species that we have to respect. We have to be very careful of because they do have certain characteristics, certain behaviors, and require certain tolerances by us to make sure that they thrive and that they have a healthy home and that we're not going to get into a predicament where we might risk their life or our own, of course. Okay. So you might find it surprising to learn that polar bears and grizzly bears, although they're a different species, they can actually mate and produce viable offspring. Now, as a fellow who studied carnivore biology and did a master's on Arctic fox, when we look at species from a biologist perspective and we, in taxonomy, classify individuals, polar bears and grizzly bears theoretically should not actually be different species. If they can produce, if a female and a male from a grizzly bear and a polar bear can get together and they can produce viable offspring, then actually they're not two different species. And when we look at grizzly bears and polar bears, the thought is that they basically evolved, the branch kind of split about 100,000 years ago. And what occurred was that a grizzly bear went hunting out on the ice, the Arctic Ocean ice, the polar ice, and was successful. And slowly over time, certain characteristics became selected for, and those characteristics were more and more allowed them to survive. And of course, those genes survived, and then those individuals produced more and more. And all of a sudden, we had a polar bear species that existed. But we know that polar bears and grizzly bears do intermingle at times, and they're called growlers or pisleys. There's different nicknames for them. I've seen some photos of them. I've never seen one myself. And we're probably going to see that a little bit more now because of the fact is that with global climate change, grizzly bears, those that are living in southern Nunavut, certain areas of northern Manitoba and such, okay, because that's where their range is, they're starting to go a little bit further north and they're mixing a little bit more with polar bears. And this is a perfect example. This is Nakota here. And Nakota, you know, we can look at her and go, wow, that's an interesting looking bear. She is a very, very blonde, and I would call her a white grizzly bear. Nakota, in the First Nations language of the local peoples here, that means friend or ally. And so this is a very good example of a situation where this bear, very blondish, very whitish, could be out on the Arctic Ocean ice. And when she's out hunting her prey, which might be ringed seals, might be caribou, might be other things, she would have been very successful. And slowly she might have had more and more cubs and her genes would have been passed on. And that's how we would have got polar bears. Now, as global climate change occurs, are we going to see polar bears start to revert back to grizzly bears? Well, it's hard to say what could happen. there are indications that polar bears are finding other ways to survive in warmer climates, but they are definitely on the decline. So Dakota here is a very special bear. We've heard about her a lot. She's a bear that's in the Banff area as well. She is a female bear, and she is a grizzly bear. So just a unique coat color in this case. She's not albino. I had the good fortune of seeing her last spring. She was very healthy. She's getting to be in that 4 to 5 year old range. So a very healthy bear. Very nice to see at that age that she is so healthy. How do you recognize grizzly bears? So you might be out on the landscape and you might go, wow, is that a black bear or is that a grizzly bear? Up in the Arctic, it should be pretty obvious. A grizzly bear, unless they're really white colored, they're going to be a lot darker than a polar bear. Polar bears are very light in colored. David and I always call them something yellow because they have, a hollow tube for fur, but their fur almost looks whitish or yellowish. But you can kind of tell grizzly bears by one distinctive feature, and that is this big shoulder hump that they have on their back. And that's right behind their head. You'll see a big hump there, and that hump is a attachment of a lot of muscles of their forearms. And why is that there? Well, that's there because they dig. They are very good diggers. They like to dig for ground squirrels. They like to dig for shoots and roots and such. And so they're very good diggers. And that big muscle there allows them to dig or is indicative of the fact that they are such good diggers. Their color is from blonde to black, but I mean, some black bears can, almost mimic the coloration of a grizzly bear to a certain extent. They have big front claws, which black bears and polar bears really don't have. So if you see a bear with really long 2 to 4 inch long claws on the front, that would be a grizzly bear. You typically find them in mountain and forests, but they can be on the tundra as well. But of course, we know black bears can very much be in the mountains and forests as well. Omnivorous, so they tend to eat a diet of vegetation and a diet of meat. Polar bears are specifically carnivores. Black bears would be omnivorous again. And a big feature as well is that grizzled or silver tip, because their nickname sometimes is silver tip, that grizzled or silver tip coloration on the end of their fur. And that would be very indicative that you're looking at a grizzly bear. Very sensitive species to change behaviorally. There's the other thing that you should know about this species is from a behavior standpoint. This is a bear that, because it grew up on the prairies, historically, it had a huge range across Canada, North America. It was a bear that was living in areas that had a lack of shelter. They couldn't, perhaps run and hide in the trees or run up a rock cliff and get out of the way or something like that. So they became accustomed when they were being encountered maybe by a threat of some kind, another species, they would stand their ground and they naturally had to defend themselves. So a behavior that's very common with grizzly bears is that if they perceive a threat, they're going to stand their ground, and actually a lot of times they'll act quite aggressive. They will charge. They will want to eliminate that threat. They will want that threat to go away. This isn't something that you see in the black bear and polar bear species as much. Polar bears typically, if they're following you, they're going to hunt you. Black bears tend to be quite shy and want to run away, but that's, again, depends on how many different experiences they've had with humans. So, okay, so while grizzly bears go to sleep, and they're going to be starting to wake up now, so in the fall time they start going to sleep because their food runs out and such. Polar bears are thriving. They're out on the ice. So again, another way to tell a difference here is between the lifestyles of polars and grizzlies is that grizzlies thrive in the summer. Polar bears thrive in the winter. So during the summer, polar bears are actually going through something called walking hibernation. During the winter, grizzly bears are going through a period of sleep or torpor or hibernation, I should say, excuse me. And that's partially because of the lack of resources in both species cases. So in the wintertime, there's not a lot of berries out there growing in the snow. And of course, in the wintertime up in the north, the seals are up on top of the ice, and the polar bears have a platform of ice to hunt seals from. In the summer, there's lots of food for grizzly bears. There's lots of greens. There's lots of berries. There's ground squirrels out. And of course, the polar bears are like, there's no ice. I can't outswim a seal. So at that point in time, the roles are reversed. So very interesting. Just before that big kind of deep sleep, though, of grizzly bears, what's going to happen in the fall time is that these bears are going to go through a period of what they call hyperphagia. And hyperphagia, that's a biological term meaning they have a biological need to just fatten up before going into their den. They need a lot of resources. They know that they're going to go to sleep. And so that big sleep is driven by the fact of when the resources run out. So for instance, a bear that, would come across, let's say, for instance, a caribou carcass right at the end of fall, and that caribou carcass might provide, let's just say for fun, 2 or 3 weeks of nutrition for that bear and for fattening up. Well, that'd have to be a really big caribou, by the way. But anyway, what I'm saying is that if there's food there, they might stay out of their den a little bit longer because they can keep fattening up and fattening up and fattening up. But once that cold comes and they can't get to any resources, it makes most sense to go to sleep. Just have a good sleep. I put on a lot of weight. I'm good. During hyperphagia, these can be very dangerous bears. They want to eat everything that they can find. And so sometimes, humans can be at very high risk if they're in those areas. So fall time is a period of time where you really have to watch out. What kind of consumption are they doing? They can eat up to 200,000 berries a day. And I've seen them up in the Yukon. They're like little vacuum cleaners just with their nozzle, just going through those red berries, those red little vegetation areas, picking up cloudberries and bearberries. They are just going like the little bears would be fishing for salmon. They would be going after salmon and just, basically gorging themselves with those rich salmon. And very lucky for those bears along those areas, because if there's a lot of salmon, they have a very easy hibernation because it's so easy to get fat and large and full of resources from those rich salmon. And of course, this is all part of an ecosystem. They're so important when we look, at the resources or the nutrients that we see in the ground, and they do some nitrogen tracking in the plants and then the trees that are next door to these beautiful rivers. What they end up finding out is that the salmon, the nutrients from the salmon, the nitrogen in the salmon, it ends up in the tree. And that tree might be 50 or 100 meters into the forest. Well, how did it get there? Well, these grizzly bears, they go catch a salmon, they wander off into the trees to a nice cool spot, and they have their lunch. And of course, they don't eat everything. And so slowly that salmon decays. And that whole ecosystem benefits from them living in that environment. There's the scavengers that clean up, the ravens, the bald eagles. I saw a pine marten one time cleaning up a salmon along a river up in BC. It was so awesome. He's jumping along the rocks and such. So there's so many different ways that these bears contribute to a healthy ecosystem, to the health and wellness of all of us in North America. So. Sorry, excuse me, there we go. So yeah, soon after, once those resources close down and they can't access food, there's no salmon, there's no berries necessarily, these bears go to sleep and they rely on the bulk that they put on, okay? I'm gonna flip gears just for a second here. So I wanna just talk about a couple things, okay? I'm just gonna go to the chat here and just double check that everybody's doing well, okay? Oh, Pisley, okay, right on, I like it. Everybody seems to be on track with things here, so that's great. So I want to talk first off, back in February, we had a very important announcement, and I want to congratulate all of you, my entire community. I want to just stop this for a second here. I want to say thank you to the entire community out there, to everyone. How appreciative I am. We added another 160 acres of land to our conservation land fund. So now we have 1,760 acres of nature and of land and homes for animals that will be there for them and just for them. So very, very thankful to my community for all of that. Thankful to my team at All in the Wild, my sister Janine, my partner Nicola, everyone, Greg, everyone, Natasha. I can't list everyone, but it's a great team that I have, a great team that I've built. And, all of you are part of this, that join my webinars and continue to support us. So thank you so much. I can't wait to add more to our conservation land fund. And then on top of it, this year is our 20th year. If you can believe it, 20 years ago, I actually opened up my first gallery on the outskirts of Prince Albert National Park in the Christopher Lake area. And with that, I wanted to celebrate. I wanted to do something this year, and of course, the Conservation Land Fund was great to be adding to that this year. And then on top of that, I wanted to do more. And we're celebrating with 2 new books. And I know that you've gotten the emails, and it's just nice to verbally talk to everyone about it a little bit. And you know, when you start off as a young individual, a young entrepreneur, a young individual with a goal of wanting to celebrate nature and share the beauty of nature, you never know where things will take you. And my father, my parents, they ran a small business for over 60 years, and God bless them. I don't know how they did it, but good for them, because it's not for the faint of heart. But they also had the support of their community, and I've had the support of my community, and I want to thank you all. I want to thank some of our corporate partners, Horizon Pet Nutrition, Pet Planet. There's a lot of different organizations that have supported us. And so I'm celebrating with these 2 new books, and they're just really amazing, presentations of some of the great adventures, some of the great things that I've managed to see. This is beautiful Banff and beyond, and it celebrates our mountain parks out in Canada and just the beauty of them. And it encapsulates 20 years of my work. So you'll see some amazing images in there. There's some images in there that you haven't seen yet. Yes, the 2024 Earth Day image is in there. So that's a hint to what might be coming up for Earth Day this year. And the books are 112 pages long. They focus on the Banff area, of course. And when we go to the next one, this is the Waskesiu book, Wild Waskesiu and Beyond, celebrating Saskatchewan's Lakeland area. That's where I got my start, and just so many amazing people up there who just love the nature and celebrate what is there. I know Saskatchewan's a very flat ecosystem, but the north has its own beauty with the lakes and the beautiful boreal forest. These books are each 112 pages long. They're the quality that you've seen of my work before, perhaps even maybe a step up from it. And we're offering to you guys out there, our community, a March pre-order promo online, and you'll get delivery of your book towards the end of May. If you want to purchase a couple books, whether you want to get 2 of the Wild Waskesiu or 1 of each, or 2 of the Banff one, you'll get 1 and 1 for your loved one perhaps, and you receive a $25 gift to use on a future opportunity to collect my work. So I'm going to just put those up here, the promotions or the offers up, so that you have them. Okay, and then basically you guys can decide, but by all means, feel free to visit the website and learn more. And thank you, because without all of you, I wouldn't be able to celebrate and share these amazing images and amazing stories with everyone. So, okay, that was a little interlude I just wanted to talk about, and we'll carry on now back to the presentation. Okay, good spot to kind of divide it up, because now I want to talk a little bit about these female grizzlies and what's going on with them. So we've talked about the males and kind of what's going on in their life and such. But when we look at female grizzlies, when the males are going into their dens, females are also going into their dens, but they probably go a little bit earlier. Okay, so they probably head into their den a little bit earlier than the males. Those big males will stay up as long as they can, but the females will go into their dens. Hopefully they're in good condition. And if they are, their body will make a decision whether they'll go through with their pregnancy or not. So this is about pregnant females, not females that might have cubs, or young females that are not sexually mature yet. So these mother bears will go in. If they're in good enough condition, they'll have their little cubs. Their little cubs are just, literally a pound in weight when they're born. Their eyes are closed. There's no hair on them. They're looking for mother's milk, so they'll climb up on her belly, and she'll sit there and comfort them and hold them in that little den. They're probably born in January. They probably won't come out of the den until, April or May. So they've got a few months together just in that darkness and just in that comfort of mom to really bond. Mother bears can have 1 to 4 cubs. 2 is probably the average, right? And when they come out of those dens, that's a whole new world for those cubs. And they already got their little fur on. They can handle the conditions. You can see in this image here, they have their little claws. Grizzly bears cannot typically climb trees. They typically will not. But the little grizzly cubs can climb trees because their claws are a little shorter and they're a little bit lighter. And so that allows them protection in the event that something would happen, okay? The real only kind of reasons that there would be any type of threats would be from male bears or wolves, or perhaps some type of a human-caused mortality. So mother bears will emerge in the spring. Beautiful image here, beautiful encounter I had in the Kootenays with a mother bear. She's got a couple cubs there. As I mentioned, they can have up to 4, but 2 is very, very common. I know down in the States, for those of you joining us from the United States, you have a famous bear in Yellowstone, bear number 399, that Thomas Mangelson, another photographer, captures amazing images of. And I guess her last litter was 4 individuals, which is incredible. These females, they will defend their cubs. They will nurture their cubs. They are very, very good moms, very, very maternal. Let's share an awesome little video here, okay, of some fun cubs playing. Yeah. Look at those little scrappers. Wow. I feel so blessed to have been able to experience times like that. That was just an incredible moment, incredible little scene of 2 little cubs playfighting. Playfighting is important, of course, going to help them grow, help them learn to be strong little guys. Typically, when you look at cubs that are born, there will be 1 female, 1 male, typically a 50-50 sex ratio, but that doesn't always mean that every mother bear has 1 male and 1 female. Sometimes they'll have 2 females, 1 litter, and 2 males the next. You never know. So all depends. Like I said, the little cubs are raring to go. That was a still from that little scrap that happened, and they're raring to go. They play fight. They're full of lots of energy. They'll take nursing breaks with mom. Mom in the springtime is just really out looking for green shoots, looking for anything there that will provide some nutrients. Again, she's an omnivorous individual, so she will take advantage if she would find any type of elk calves, moose calves, or opportunistic with something else. She will take advantage of that. But those little cubs, they'll start to eat a little bit of green grass and a little bit of protein if mother would find something. But they do really rely on mother's milk for that growth and such. Now, I have a curious question for you all, because this will be an interesting one. But let's talk a little bit about grizzly bears and about their reproduction. How many of you, would know the answer to this? So out of all of these choices below, the wolverine, the muskox, and the grizzly bear, which species do you think has the lowest reproductive rate? Now, we know that muskox live a very long life. They have very few calves, grizzly bears, we know, live a medium long length, so in their 20s and such. They produce, quite a few different cubs. And wolverines are very rare species. Little is known about wolverines, but we do know that they don't have a lot of young. They probably have young every year, but live in some very, very interesting habitats. So in terms of survival rates and such, which one do you think has the lowest reproductive rate? A little bit interested to see what everybody thinks here. Okay, we're going to just keep this poll going for a smidge, okay? Right now, people are definitely leaning towards the wolverine and surprisingly the muskox as well. Grizzly bears a little bit, okay? All right, I'm going to end this poll in a second here, okay? Oops, sorry about that. Okay, let's end the poll. So at the end, 48% of you feel that it's the wolverine species, 36% feel it's the muskox species, and 14% feel that it's the grizzly bear species. You will be surprised, and I'm not shocked at your answers. I would have went towards the wolverine as well, and I might have went towards muskox as well. They are very slow reproducing species, but it's actually the grizzly bear. The grizzly bear is the slowest reproducing species in North America. So that's why every bear, every cub is so important. If we look at an average lifespan of 25 years, okay, it takes a female grizzly about 10 years before she has offspring that are eventually mature enough to replace her. That means she's probably going to have her first set of cubs around age 5 or 6, by the time they stay with mom for, 2 or 3 years. So by the time they're on their own, mother bear's already going to be 10 years old. All right. So that's the first opportunity. Okay. If a male and a female grizzly bear were born today, okay, and produced in their natural cycle, and none of their offspring would die. So this is assuming no death to any of their offspring. Okay. Their population would only amount to 8 grizzlies in 10 years. 8. In contrast, okay, if you looked at a pair of white-tailed deer, they could produce more than 1,400 descendants in that same amount of time. Wow, eh? Okay, and then on top of this, we have to understand that's assuming that all those cubs lived. In grizzly bears, 50% of cubs die in their first year. Okay, a female grizzly bear has a lifetime reproductive rate of only 1.6. It's one of the lowest in North America. Okay, polar bears would be in there as well. They're a very slow reproducing species, very slow and very surprising as we can tell from that poll. It does kind of seem like, wow, bears, I thought they reproduced really quickly. They're definitely late bloomers, okay? Cubs will stay with their mom for up to 3 years and typically do not mature until the age of 4. And although females and males mature around the same age, male grizzlies seldom mate at that young age, right? There's big males out there. They're way more dominant. So they're widely outranked by their significant bigger elders. The average age for a female grizzly to first reproduce is around 4 to 5 years of age. So, but, it could happen at age 3. It could be as late as age 8. And mating season is from May through July, with the peak being in June, of course. So, with that being said, it's hard to know when you get populations that have declined a lot in certain species, like a species like grizzly bear, that can lead to a lot of problems. Problems like inbreeding, problems like if there's any, bad genetics, will that population recover? Okay. So while these while these mothers are coming out of their dens, I want to talk about the other females as well. While the mothers are coming out of their dens, they're tending to their new little cubs, or maybe it's the second year with their cubs. We also have these other bears, the ones that we're talking about here, that are receptive females that go into heat and they'll be courted by males. Most males will need to be 10 years or older. Again, okay, you got to be a big dominant male. And she picks the largest and most dominant male. And to be honest with you, it's kind of a game. She'll actually swat some of her suitors away. She'll give them a swat and say, no, I'm not interested. And she'll be in heat for probably a week to 10 days, and other male bears will come along and they might have to fight over her. And you can see in this image here, that big male has a gash on the top of his forehead. He had to scrap to win her. And that's the reality of the bear world. You might have to scrap for love. So she's not monogamous, and a female may have a litter of cubs that have different fathers. That's reality. So, okay. Now let's go on to this here. Where are grizzly bears found? Okay, so the orange in this image shows you the persisting range right now, okay? That's where they are now. The range that they lost is the yellow, and the red is actually a little expansion range. So when we look at grizzly bears, we can see that their range has declined quite a bit. And that's partially to the fact that their reproduction is low. So if they're not in an area, it's going to be hard for them to get back into that area. Okay. And we'll ask another quick poll here of you. Okay. And that is, how many grizzly bears do you think live in Canada? So let's see here. We'll start this poll. Okay. How many grizzly bears do you think are in Canada? All right. So with that being said, probably the highest population of grizzlies in Canada would be British Columbia. Okay. Of course, in the United States, it would be Alaska. So some of those regions along the coastlines where there's salmon and quite availability of nutrition before they go for that big sleep is places where grizzly bears will really thrive. So, okay, we're getting close here. We've got 39%, 34% for 10,000 and 15,000 respectively, 19% for 20,000, 7% for 25,000. Well, you'll be happy to know that there's actually 25,000 grizzlies that exist in Canada, okay? 15,000 in British Columbia, as I mentioned, and the other 10,000 are in the Rocky Mountains of Alberta, the Yukon, Northwest Territories, Southern Nunavut, and of course, Northern Manitoba, All right, those are the areas where grizzly bears exist in Canada. So that really isn't shown on that map. The area in, well, I guess northern Manitoba kind of is shown there. But yeah, there's a pocket of them in northern Manitoba as well. What you might be surprised to learn is that when we look at the population of grizzly bears in Banff National Park, you'll be shocked to know there's only around 65 individuals. And that's sad, that's worrisome. The good news is that bears can come from BC and help out with some of that genetic diversity and such. Why? Why is this occurring? Well, here's an image of Nakota, okay? And Nakota was not being a good bear 2 years ago. She was climbing the park's fence and going up against the Trans-Canada Highway. Why? Well, a couple different reasons. One reason would be there was nice dandelions, nice green grass there. But more importantly, the second reason would be is that there was probably a big male bear on the other side of that fence that was harassing her. And she was nervous. She wasn't sure what to do. And safety is more on the Trans-Canada, surprisingly, than it would be on the other side of the fence where there might be a male grizzly that could attack her and injure her. I'll show you this video quick, a little bit about Nakota here, okay, and some of the life that she's experienced. A little bit hard to watch sometimes, but the reality of some of these bears, okay. Okay, so those are the reality of some of the things that we see in Banff National Park if you visited before, or maybe you haven't visited before, but that is the reality. These bears are experiencing a lot of different life than they would be in the middle of British Columbia or the northern part of Nunavut, or the southern range where they are in Nunavut. They have a lot more to deal with, the Trans-Canada Highway, different situations. And Nakota, as much as she's a happy story, she's actually quite a sad story for her. Nakota's mom was actually hit on the Trans-Canada, a year after Nakota was on her own. And her sister, that you can see in this photo that was nicknamed Peaches, also passed away from being struck on the Trans-Canada Highway. Mother bears teach their cubs, where to go feed, where to go find food, how to live, how to make a successful life. And Nakota learned that behavior as well by climbing that fence and getting up against that Trans-Canada Highway. Human-caused mortalities are the biggest cause of deaths in grizzly bears. This is a systemic from our development, causing the fragmentation of their homes and the disruption of their natural existence. More logging roads, more gas and oil exploration, and more industry is not good for grizzly bears. They're a very sensitive species. They can't handle that. It's just not something that works well with this species. Studies have even shown in very wild grizzly bears, female grizzlies, so not bears that are necessarily from the Banff area where they're used to a lot of roads and having to deal with human infrastructure, but that female grizzlies can actually be reluctant to cross roads to the point that it can actually impact the way that their genes are spread around a population. So a female bear might not cross a road and go to that next valley where maybe there was a male that she was going to mate with and have some other genetics introduced to her population. And then, of course, we have the situation in Banff National Park with the rail line running right through the national park, running through British Columbia. And the rails do drop food. There's grain that's dropped from their cars, and it's a natural also kind of travel route. I mean, especially in winter, easy to travel on those tracks and get a long distance, especially for big male bears. There's other animals that are hit along the tracks, so it's easy to find some food. If we look at just between Canmore and Field, BC, the thought is that there's enough grain dropped on those tracks to meet the nutritional needs of 50 grizzly bears' annual requirements. So pretty shocking that occurs, because we all know, all of us, right? This is not a bare necessity, right? What can you do? Well, don't do this. Okay, this is not good. And I think we should also be encouraging the rail lines to clean up their act as well, and also, helping to educate our friends, our family, and you never know where that goes with some of the positions that they hold in their companies and some of the decisions that they'll make. So most importantly, what's my number one? Education. Educate yourself. Okay. If you're going to be in the homes of grizzly bears, do the right things. Talk to your friends, talk to your family. Okay. Make sure that we're all being respectful stewards of the landscape and of this species. Okay. So first off, properly dispose all your trash. Carry bear spray always. Always have bear spray with you. Okay. That'll save your life, and that'll save the grizzly bear's life if you would have an encounter that went the wrong way. Avoid areas like berry patches, especially in the fall time. Avoid tight trails where you could surprise a grizzly bear. Never approach a grizzly bear. Okay, if you are going to do some photography of grizzly bear, make sure you've learned a lot, make sure you know a lot, have a long lens, photograph from the safety of your vehicle, be with many people. There's always safety in numbers. It's believed that there's never been a documented case of a grizzly bear attacking groups of 3 or more people. Make lots of noise when you're hiking. I don't go looking for grizzly bears. I make a lot of noise. I don't go looking for the boss. But when I happen upon the boss and I'm in the safety of my vehicle, then I feel like I can do some photography and share his story and the story of other grizzly bears that I might encounter. Okay. Report all bear sightings. Parks Canada works so hard for all of us. They're an incredible organization. They're trying to help us. They're trying to save grizzly bears. Their job is actually to protect bears from humans, not the other way around. Okay. They're protecting bears from our actions. So they're working diligently to help every bear and make sure that every bear survives. Because as we know, and as I told you with their reproductive rates and such, every bear is so important. When we look at Alberta specifically, okay, there's some good news going on here. All right, historically, it was estimated that there was 6,000 to 9,000 grizzly bears in Alberta. That number dwindled to just 691 in 2010, and they became listed as a threatened species. And with that, the hunting of grizzly bears in Alberta stopped, thankfully. Not thankfully that their numbers declined, but thankfully hunting stopped. We don't need to kill grizzly bears. What for? No one eats them. Maybe some indigenous peoples do, and then they have those rights. But that there's no reason to kill a grizzly bear unless it's threatening. They are still considered species at risk within Alberta, and there's no hunting of them yet. I believe this is occurring in British Columbia as well. And so 2 provinces that there is no hunting of grizzly bears, thankfully. Today it is estimated that there is around 900 bears and that their population is on the rise in Alberta. So that's great news. Great news. Okay. I'm going to leave you with a final quote. I think we have a lot to learn from our Indigenous peoples of North America and their wisdom and their respect for nature. Whenever I am with my friends that are Indigenous, they just have a different way of approaching things, a very respectful way of approaching. And I think some of that wisdom of peoples who lived with their environment and in harmony with their environment is a lot of what we need to all try to incorporate into our daily lives and into our industries and workplaces. So with that, I will leave it. I'm going to go to questions and answers, and I want to thank you all for your time. I know that, oh, just wait, sorry, excuse me, I'll just get this off here. I know that it's Sunday, and I appreciate that you take the time to join us and to learn and to let me share my love of nature and to educate you as well so that you can go ahead and make some better decisions. Because again, let's hug bears. All right. That's my green St. Patty's Day shirt. For those of you that didn't see me at the beginning, that's what I was sharing with everyone. So, okay, question and answer time. I left the offers up there. You can visit us if you have any questions about the books and such. Please, by all means, reach out to us, the new books that are coming out. And April is Earth Month, okay? Earth Day is coming up, April 22nd. We look forward to lots of celebrations here at All in the Wild. Again, I want to thank you all, my community and my team, for being just awesome people, everyone. We're a small little movement, this community of ours, but hey, all of us are doing our part, and grassroots get some amazing things done. So Thank you. You're welcome. Oh, my sister Jacqueline said thank you. You're welcome, Jacqueline. I hope you're having a great Sunday. John, you're welcome. Always so interesting. Thank you, Robin and Deborah. Appreciate it. Happy St. Patty's Day. Thanks very much. You're welcome, Nancy. Again, any questions that anyone might have, I'm here to answer any questions for the next 5 or 10 minutes, and then we'll tie it up. You're welcome, Trish. You're welcome. Ooh, not too many questions. I'm glad that I answered everyone's questions on this webinar this time. That's phenomenal. I love it. Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome, Kathy. Okay, Mike Cook has a question. Have you ever looked at trying to photograph the Swan Hills Grizzlies in Alberta? No, I have not, Mike. Thank you for that. I will do a little research there. Mike, you can answer back in the chat here. Have you actually gone out to the Swan Hills and photographed the Grizzlies there? I'd be curious to know. So you're welcome, Sue. You're welcome, Keith. Welcome, Krista. Dave has a question. Okay, do you have a question? A question? Maybe. We'll see if Dave has a question. David. You're welcome. Jeremy asked, do you have a favorite season to go shoot in? Jeremy, it's any time of year. I love being out all times of year. I will say that the summer is really hard on a person. Sitting in blinds and getting inundated by insect life is really complicated. And you can understand why caribou in our central Arctic of Canada can go crazy. They can lose up to a pint of blood. And unless you're really well prepared in those environments, the summer can be really tough. I prefer to put more clothes on than to have to take more clothes off. So summer is sometimes going to be too hot, the conditions. Wintertime, fall time, spring, you can always get some clothes on and such. So depends what I'm photographing. Obviously, there's species of the year, like when you're photographing, a little den site with fox kits or wolf cubs, that's going to be in the summertime because that's when they're out and about. So it all really depends, Jeremy. But I love every season, but probably my least favorite would be the summer. Those are tougher times. Oh, Janine asks, my sister asks, what has been the most interesting bear encounter? So in terms of grizzly bears, Janine, probably the mothers and cubs. I will say that I've had some amazing encounters with mums and cubs, fortunately, from the safety of a vehicle or in a very safe situation. And when you see those little cubs, and it's almost like there's little human children out there with fur coats on and just so playful, it's pretty incredible to watch them and to just experience that. In addition to that, I had an amazing experience with a grizzly bear along the BC coast one time where I was being guided by a professional crew. I was at the front of a boat and we were slowly approaching a grizzly that was fishing along the edge of this kind of estuary. And the boat was moving in slower and slower. And I was just looking through my 600mm lens and I just kept shooting and everybody was quiet and the boat just kept moving. And one of the people from the back said, Jason, just pop your head above your camera. And I looked up and the bear was completely calm. Nothing was going on. We were a group of professionals. We knew what we were doing. And the bear gave me the most intimate look. I was probably only 10 yards away, but safe. There was no threat. The bear didn't want to hurt me. We didn't want to hurt the bear. And I got an incredible image, which is entitled Gentle Soul. And some of you may have collected that. So anyway, pretty awesome experience. Thanks, Janine. Thank you, Brian. Yes, I have been, but not been able to photograph. Oh, big bears. Yeah, Mike, I would think big bears back in that area. So yeah. So on the map, you showed locations in Canada. There was a small orange spot in the middle of the yellow. Why? I believe, David, that's a great question. I believe that's the population of grizzlies in the Yellowstone National Park of the United States. I believe that would be what that little orange spot was. So there's a little population down there, Wyoming, Montana, that would exist. Historically, grizzly bears, as you saw, existed through a lot of the plains and a lot of the western part of the United States, but they've been extirpated from those areas. Extirpated means locally extinct. And that is why that little orange sliver exists there. Okay, great question. You're welcome, Jim. Thank you for the webinar. Where is the next place in Canada or the world you are looking to photograph in? Charlene, I'm going to be in the Arctic in April, so I'll be up working with polar bears again. After that time, I'm not really sure. I think it's going to be more local, to be honest with you. So I think we're going to be a little more focused on the local areas and such. Haven't decided everything for the next few months, Charlene. The book projects were a lot, so I was pretty focused on the books for the last 3 months. So anyway, Charlene, great question. I am headed to Canada's north and to go visit my good friend David in April, and to go and photograph the polar bears. Christy, who's out here in Alberta, one of our team members, have you seen or photographed grizzlies in Nunavut? Is the tundra grizzly different from more western? Yes, Christy. When I was doing my master's up in the Arctic, I did experience what they're called barren ground grizzly bears. They're a lot smaller bear physically in terms of their size relative to bears out here in the western part of Canada. So they're a lot smaller bear. From what I can see, their diet would rely more on caribou calves versus things like salmon and such. They would have a diet that's very reliant on berries as well, but they would be opportunistic. I know that where I was working at a goose colony, they were actually lapping up eggs. So they were taking advantage of geese and goose eggs. So great question, Christy. But yes, they are very different. And the same with grizzly bears on the British Columbia coast versus our mountain grizzlies here in the Canadian Rockies. Those bears on the BC coast can get quite large. They can get very large with the salmon that they feed upon, whereas our bears out here tend to be a little bit smaller. So the boss being 600 to 700 pounds is a big bear, a big mountain grizz. That might be kind of an average male on the British Columbia coast, where those bears might get up to 800 or 900 pounds for sure. So, okay, we saw Mother Grizz and Two Cups playing at the Lake Louise ski area. Cool, Patricia, right on, good for you. Also, David asks, is the grizzly bear part of the brown bear family, or is the brown bear a different species altogether? David, they're the same species. It's about where they occur geographically. So brown bears tend to live in areas where they feed on salmon, so they tend to be along the coastal lines. So for instance, Alaska and BC. Grizzly bears tend to be interior and living in the mountains. They're the exact same species. It's just a matter of what diet they eat. Then there's another group of bears that are called Kodiak bears, and those live specifically on Kodiak Island in Alaska. And those are very large bears that feed specifically just on salmon. They might eat other things as well a little bit, but their primary diet is salmon. Where when we look at the BC coast, they would have a diet of salmon, but they would be eating some vegetation as well. So exact same species, no difference, just geographically where they differ. So Stephanie asks, what is your favorite location to see grizzlies? Stephanie, probably, to be honest with you, in the area that I am in, Jasper, Banff, this area here. They're very interesting bears. It's nice to know their life story. There's been so many, people who have followed these bears, so we know a lot about these bears. Parks Canada has also shared information with us about these bears. Seeing bears fishing in the coastlines of BC and of course up into the Yukon and Alaska, well, that's wow as well. Seeing that behavior of these big grizzlies chasing down salmon, wow, pretty awesome. So, but yeah, I would probably say for the most part, it's the areas in the Canadian Rockies that I really appreciate seeing these grizzlies. Yeah. What is the minimum viable population for grizzlies over what period of time? Good question, Trudy. That would be a very, a grizzly bear scientist would have to answer that. I can tell you that with 65 grizzly bears in Banff, that makes me very nervous from the studies that I conducted. I never worked specifically on grizzlies, but that's a very small population of bears. And to keep them healthy and not get into homozygosity, where some traits can be very disadvantaged, or bring them to a very disadvantaged state of survival. So I don't know the exact number, but that seems to be nervous for me. I wouldn't want to see that to decline anymore. I hope that grizzly bears in the Banff area start to increase greatly. And with the grizzly bear hunt being stopped in Alberta, that should occur hopefully, as long as we keep to have, Parks Canada working on our behalf to keep these bears in this area safe. So how do you increase, Keith asks, how do the increased fires each summer affect grizzlies in Alberta and BC? So Keith, with that being said, think of those fires. They're going ahead and they're burning down habitat that grizzlies might have been thriving in, river valleys, whatever it might be. There might have been a berry crop in there. Now with that comes rejuvenation. So maybe these berry crops come back. Maybe some of that will help with them. But all indicators is that global climate change is going to impact grizzlies in a negative way. They're going to move further north. We're going to see them into Nunavut a lot more. We're going to see them relying on only certain areas. Obviously, they can't outrun a fire. So depending on the situation, mums with cubs. Thankfully, they're not a burrowing species. I believe that from my knowledge, and can't say this 100%, but that grizzly bears would try to get away from a fire versus burrow, because burrowing animals typically do not do well in forest fire situations. All of this global climate change is probably going to negatively impact any species that are kind of a little bit of a specialist in an environment. And grizzly bears, in my opinion, would be considered a specialist given the diet that they require, given the fact that they need to do hibernation. We don't want these bears staying up later into the fall time because things are warmer and then there's no food. And it's like, well, how do I put on the fat? I'm supposed to go to sleep. My body was meant to go to sleep. And also waking up earlier and coming out of hibernation going, okay, well, when I usually come out of hibernation, things are green and there's food, and the berries come shortly after. And if those berry crops fail, which we know some of them are because it's too hot, and if they come out of hibernation earlier, are they going to start looking at, again, humans for food? And then we have those interactions that end negatively, typically for the bears. So it was suggested the females seek out the it was suggested females seek out the people populated areas so male grizzlies won't kill the cubs to force her into estrus. Truth to this, Patricia, could be. Yeah, I would think that some situations might have female grizzlies go where there is population. Like look at Nakota. She went up against the Trans-Canada Highway because she'd rather take that risk than take the risk of being attacked by a big male bear. So I think there is some truth to that, Patricia. I don't know if there's been a scientific study done to show that. There was a famous bear from the Banff area, bear number 64. She lived quite long in life as well. She had her last set of cubs at 22. That's typically when bears would go into menopause, is in their early 20s. And she lived right outside the Banff town site. So yeah, very much so. She found protection by living in that Banff area and made a very good living and learned how to live with humans. So Robert and Deborah, sorry. Thank you for that. That's awesome. I love your question there. Not sure if that'll be coming out, but maybe one day. Wow, Don, cool experience. Went over a sow and 2 cubs in the Lake Louise area. Good for you. Love all the animals too. Right on, Robert and Deborah. Okay, thank you, everyone. I think we'll end it there. If there's no other questions, really appreciated your questions at the end here. And thank you for joining me. We'll probably see you again in a month or maybe a month and a half when the next webinar will be. It'll be after I get back from the Arctic. We'll do one more nature night before the series ends, but that'll be towards the end of April. So stay in touch with us, however you like to do that. Social media, our website, through our emails, whatever you may like. And again, thanks for your time this evening. And have a happy rest of St. Patrick's Day, okay? Happy spring tomorrow. All right, take care, everyone. Keep loving nature. Bye for now.